My name's Caleb Morgan. I'm 28, military, stationed in Georgia. Married my wife, Rachel, 2 years ago after dating for 3. We had what most would call a classic military romance, whirlwind, passionate, half held together by FaceTime and nostalgia. She'd always say she liked that I was disciplined. I liked that she made home feel less like a place and more like a person. Our first year of marriage was anything but peaceful. I was gone the entire time, bouncing between bases for training, often without access to a phone. Before I left, I laid down ground rules. Not because I didn't trust her, but because trust, to me, is maintained like an engine, constant oil checks, not wishful thinking. She agreed. Nodded sweetly, said, of course. We're in this together. The first gut punch came when I got back from a 2-week blackout stint in Texas. A buddy from home sent me a picture he saw on Instagram. Rachel, at a beach party, barely dressed, surrounded by women who looked like they took turns reading the same breakup manual. Thong bikini, martini glass, tagged by someone named Listamus. I tried not to jump to conclusions. She said she didn't know those friends were cheating on their military boyfriends. Said they were just lonely and that she never did anything wrong. She even agreed to stop hanging out with them. That threw me off. It was so easy, I didn't know what to do with that. We moved in together once I got stationed at Fort Candler. For 2 years, we tried to make something out of it. Grocery lists. Bill calendars. Movie nights with frozen pizza. It should have been a calm sea, but there were always these little undercurrents. She'd accuse me of cheating constantly. I mean constantly. Every training weekend, every phone call I missed. I used to think it was just old wounds talking. She had a history with betrayal, and I figured she was projecting. I didn't know I was feeding the very fire I'd one day have to crawl through. One night we fought. Bad. She said my eyes looked at other women even if my body didn't. I snapped and said, "You accuse me so much, I bet you're the one cheating. Probably with your ex." And that's when she did it. She smirked. Calm as a loaded gun. Well, his dick is bigger. The room went dead. Like a power outage in a storm. I couldn't think. Couldn't speak. Just walked into the next room and sat on the floor. My chest felt like someone had taken a crowbar to it. She cried. Swore it was just to hurt me. That it didn't mean anything. Said she loved me. That she wanted to work through it. I told myself I'd forgive. Because that's what you do when you believe marriage is for life. But it didn't feel like forgiveness. It felt like folding. About a year later, Rachel started complaining of pain during getting close. Said something didn't feel right. She had a copper IUD, and I figured it might have shifted. Told her to go get it checked out. She went. They said she had ovarian cysts and that the IUD needed to be removed. Routine stuff, or so I thought. As part of the visit, they did a standard STI panel. And that's where the floor dropped out again. Mycoplasma genitalium. That's what she tested positive for. I blinked when she told me. Thought it was a made-up name or a fungus you find under the sink. Turns out, it's a bacterial STI. Hard to detect. But one thing's clear, you don't get it from gym equipment. She said, I must have had it for years. I've never felt symptoms. I asked, how many years? She shrugged. I don't know. Maybe from before we got married. I wanted to believe her. So I did what I always do when something doesn't add up. I buried myself in research. I was in bed by midnight and still scrolling through CDC reports at 2:45 a.m. The science didn't lie. It can go unnoticed, sure. But lasting 5 years? Through regular testing, a copper IUD, a marriage with 0 other infections? Odds were slim to none. And Slim had already packed his bags. She swore up and down she'd never cheated. Said she'd take a lie detector test. That she'd go on camera, swear to God, pinky promise, whatever I wanted. I didn't know what to do with that. My gut said one thing, but my heart begged me to believe. One night, I couldn't sleep. I went into the kitchen and sat in the dark with my hands wrapped around a coffee mug I never even drank from. Just stared at the floor like the answers might be spilled in the grout. And all I could think about was a memory from deployment. I was in New Mexico, mid-training. Couldn't talk for 3 weeks. When I finally got my phone back, there were 112 messages. All from her. Some sweet. Some accusatory. Some desperate. But one stuck with me. It just said, "I miss who we were." I remember staring at that message, rereading it over and over, like it was written in a language I used to know. Now I wonder if that was her conscience speaking. 2 weeks later, my paycheck hit. Bills were due. Rachel asked to go to Ulta Beauty to buy hair soap. I said sure. Just the soap weighed on the makeup. Later that night, I checked our joint account. $127.86. I asked her, "What did you get?" She said, "Just hair soap. Got 2 bottles." 4 questions later, I was still getting the same answer. Finally, I said, "Send me a picture of the receipt." That's when she cracked. Admitted she bought makeup too. I stared at her. Not because she bought it, but because she lied. 4 times. Straight-faced. Over mascara. She said, "It's just makeup." I don't get why you're this mad. I wasn't mad about the eyeliner. I was mad because the lies no longer needed stakes. She could look me dead in the eye and lie like it was breathing. And if she could lie like that about something so small, what else was under the rug? I told her I needed space. Again. That night, I lay in bed with the sound of her crying 3 feet away and felt more alone than I did on my loneliest night in training. At least then, the silence didn't lie to me. And that's when I started writing all of this down. Not to vent. To remember. Because I had a feeling I'd need to remind myself later, this wasn't paranoia. This was pattern. My name's Caleb Morgan. I'm 28, military, stationed in Georgia. Married my wife, Rachel, 2 years ago after dating for 3. We had what most would call a classic military romance, whirlwind, passionate, half held together by FaceTime and nostalgia. She'd always say she liked that I was disciplined. I liked that she made home feel less like a place and more like a person. Our first year of marriage was anything but peaceful. I was gone the entire time, bouncing between bases for training, often without access to a phone. Before I left, I laid down ground rules. Not because I didn't trust her, but because trust, to me, is maintained like an engine, constant oil checks, not wishful thinking. She agreed. Nodded sweetly, said, "Of course. We're in this together." The first gut punch came when I got back from a 2-week blackout stint in Texas. A buddy from home sent me a picture he saw on Instagram: Rachel, at a beach party, barely dressed, surrounded by women who looked like they took turns reading the same breakup manual. Thong bikini, martini glass, tagged by someone named Listamus. I tried not to jump to conclusions. She said she didn't know those friends were cheating on their military boyfriends. Said they were just lonely and that she never did anything wrong. She even agreed to stop hanging out with them. That threw me off. It was so easy, I didn't know what to do with that. We moved in together once I got stationed at Fort Candler. For 2 years, we tried to make something out of it. Grocery lists. Bill calendars. Movie nights with frozen pizza. It should have been a calm sea, but there were always these little undercurrents. She'd accuse me of cheating constantly. I mean constantly. Every training weekend, every phone call I missed. I used to think it was just old wounds talking. She had a history with betrayal, and I figured she was projecting. I didn't know I was feeding the very fire I'd one day have to crawl through. One night we fought. Bad. She said my eyes looked at other women even if my body didn't. I snapped and said, "You accuse me so much, I bet you're the one cheating. Probably with your ex." And that's when she did it. She smirked. Calm as a loaded gun. Well, his dick is bigger. The room went dead. Like a power outage in a storm. I couldn't think. Couldn't speak. Just walked into the next room and sat on the floor. My chest felt like someone had taken a crowbar to it. She cried. Swore it was just to hurt me. That it didn't mean anything. Said she loved me. That she wanted to work through it. I told myself I'd forgive. Because that's what you do when you believe marriage is for life. But it didn't feel like forgiveness. It felt like folding. 3 days after the Ulta receipt debacle, I came home to her sitting on the couch in one of my hoodies, legs tucked under her like it was just another Tuesday. She looked up, smiled faintly, and said, "Dinner's in the microwave." That's the kind of thing that used to feel like love. Now it felt like wallpaper over mold. I nodded. Didn't speak. I was too busy watching her eyes. They didn't shift. That scared me more than if they had. That night, I dreamt I was back on base standing watching the rain, alone. Except this time, instead of guarding a building, I was guarding a hollow house. My house. I woke up sweating. I started checking her location more often, not out of obsession, but from something colder, pattern recognition. She'd picked up a part-time job at a local boutique 6 months ago. Usually worked mornings, back by late afternoon. But twice now, she'd said she was working late and the timestamps didn't line up. One night, I called the store. Asked if Rachel was still there. The girl who answered said, she left about an hour ago. I stared at my phone like it had just confessed to murder. When she got home, I asked how her shift went. She smiled, kissed me on the cheek. "Busy," she said. I said nothing. Just nodded. But my stomach burned like I'd swallowed battery acid. I started documenting everything. Her comings and goings. Receipts. Screenshots. It felt pathetic. Like I'd turned into a poor man's private investigator. All I needed was a fedora and a trench coat made of emotional baggage. But the worst part wasn't the lying. It was the pretending. The constant charade that we were okay. Gallows humor started creeping in. I joked to my buddy Brandon that if I charged by the square foot of bullshit in my marriage, I'd be a millionaire. He laughed. I didn't. Then came the Sunday morning that cracked something open. She was in the shower. I was in the closet, reaching for my boots, when I noticed something wedged behind the shoe rack, her old phone. One I thought she had thrown out. It was dead. But not broken. I charged it in the garage, sitting on an overturned paint bucket like some deranged goblin. When it powered on, the screen lit up with old texts, dozens of them. Messages from someone named M. No last name. No profile pic. The messages were weeks old, maybe months, but there was enough. I had a dream about you again. Wish I could see you today. Don't forget your story if he asks. I sat there, reading them, my hands trembling, not from shock. From something worse. Validation. This was the proof my heart didn't want, but my gut demanded. And I finally had it. The dam didn't break. Not yet. But it cracked. And the water was rising. The day after I found the texts, I expected her to blow up. Somehow sensed that I knew. But instead, something unexpected happened. Her sister Brittany showed up. No warning. No call. Just a knock on the door and then the sound of wheeled luggage bumping over the welcome mat. "Hey, Caleb." Surprise. It was not a good surprise. Brittany was Rachel's older sister by 3 years and 100 decibels. Her voice carried like a foghorn during a fire drill. She had the personality of a Pinterest board that had been shaken violently, and the attention span of a toddler at a wedding. "Didn't Rachel tell you I was coming?" "I'm staying for a week." Rachel peeked around the corner, eyes wide. "I thought I told you she might come." She had not. Brittany made herself comfortable in the guest room before I had a chance to process the invasion. And just like that, my quiet paranoia-filled evenings were now accompanied by the soundtrack of Brittany's endless questions. "So, how's the married life treating you guys? Still going strong? What do you think about tiny houses? I've been thinking about building one. Do you think I should go brunette again? Be honest." I didn't answer most of them. I just nodded and prayed for the sweet mercy of silence. But in the middle of her chaos, something happened that stopped me cold. It was Thursday night. Rachel was at work. Brittany had made herself a cup of herbal tea and parked herself at the kitchen island. We talked about nothing for a while: TV, travel, which oat milk is least disgusting. Then, she looked up and said, "You love her a lot, huh?" I didn't respond right away. Just stared at my hands. "I mean," she continued, "she's Rachel. She's always been complicated. But I gotta say, you've been really patient. I raised an eyebrow. Why do you say that? She hesitated. Looked into her mug like it held the right answer. Just, you know. The way she talks about you when you're not around. Sometimes it's like she's talking about a different person. Different how? Like, she says you're cold. Distracted. Controlling sometimes. But you're not like that. At least not with me. My jaw clenched. Not because of what she said, but because it lined up. Rachel had been rewriting me to other people. Crafting a version of me that would justify anything. And that's when I realized something even worse, she was preparing people for the fallout. I laughed. Not because it was funny. More like my sanity hiccuped. You okay? Brittany asked. Yeah. Just realizing I'd been the villain in her version of the story for a while now. She looked guilty. Like she'd stepped on a landmine without knowing it. Caleb. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. I shook my head. Don't be. Honestly, it's nice to hear someone say it out loud. That night, Brittany passed out on the couch watching crime shows. I sat in the hallway with my back against the door of the guest room, staring at the ceiling. Not crying. Not shaking. Just still. It was the first time I felt the full weight of what I was losing. Not just Rachel. But the version of myself I'd been trying to be for her. The guy who forgave. Who made space. Who worked double shifts and triple overtime for a future we were never going to share. It was all hitting at once, and all I could think about was how much of myself I'd edited just to keep the story going. The next morning, Rachel came back from a run. Hair tied up, eyes bright like nothing had ever happened. She kissed my cheek and said, I had the weirdest dream last night. I almost asked if it involved someone named M. But I didn't. Not yet. I just said, yeah. What about? She smiled. I dreamed we moved to the mountains. Built a little cabin. Just you and me. No one else. I smiled back. Sounds peaceful. But in my mind, I was already packing my bags. The next phase had to begin. And this time, I wouldn't be dreaming. I never fancied myself a detective. I lose my keys twice a week and once mistook a bag of powdered sugar for protein powder. But here I was, pacing around my garage like some trenchcoat-wearing noir character with a gut full of half-truths and microwave lasagna. The old phone with the messages from Em was still hidden in my sock drawer like a cursed artifact. Every time I opened it, it whispered, "You sure you're ready for this?" So I did the thing every emotionally suppressed man does when faced with evidence of betrayal. I overcommit to a plan I had no qualifications to carry out. Operation Light Switch, I called it. Why? Because every man deserves a terrible code name for his own unraveling. I started casually bringing up old names, vague acquaintances, fabricated memories, just to see if she'd flinch. Hey, remember Marcus from the gym? I'd ask, spooning cereal like I was stirring the pot of our demise. Wonder what he's up to. She barely blinked. Probably still skipping leg day. Meanwhile, I went full NSA. I checked our phone records. Matched timestamps. Cross-referenced her boutique schedule with her credit card swipes. You know, fun married guy stuff. One night she left for a girls' dinner. I waited 15 minutes, then drove to the restaurant. No Rachel. No girls. I called her. Hey, you make it okay? She said, yeah. Just sat down. I looked at the empty parking lot and felt my heart pull the emergency brake. Cool, I said. Tell them I said hi. Will do. I went home. Sat in the driveway for half an hour, watching the porch light flicker like even the house didn't believe her anymore. She got back 2 hours later. Said they went somewhere else. Didn't remember the name. I nodded. My mouth smiled. My soul made a mental note in Sharpie. Then came the fight. It started over the thermostat. I wish I was kidding. I'm freezing, she said, wrapped in 3 blankets. It's 73 degrees. We're not lizards. Well, I can't sleep when I'm cold. I can't afford a gas bill that reads like a ransom note. Why are you being such a jerk lately? Boom. There it was. Why am I being a jerk? I said, voice low. Maybe because my gut's been screaming for weeks and every time I try to trust you, it backfires like a bad engine. What are you talking about? You tell me. Who's M? She blinked. For half a second, just blinked. Then, you went through my phone? No. I found your old one. Silence. Not the heavy kind. The calculating kind. Messages can be taken out of context. Like, I miss the way you smell? I didn't say it was a good context. My laugh came out like a bark. Jesus. Just tell me the truth. Please. I've been carrying this grenade for so long, I forgot I had a pin to pull. She folded her arms. You want the truth? Fine. I was lonely. You were gone all the time. And no, I didn't sleep with him. But yes, I let it go too far. That wasn't a line you crossed, Rachel. That was a damn airport runway. She cried then. Maybe for real. Maybe because she knew the performance mattered. And because I was still dumb enough to question if I could forgive it. I stood there, not knowing what to do with my hands, my heart, or my history. The worst part? I believed her. A little. Enough to hate myself for it. I stared at our wedding photo on the mantel, smiling under a stormy sky, both pretending we knew what forever looked like. She wiped her eyes. Are we done? I don't know, I whispered. And that was the truth. Because part of me still wanted to fix it. And part of me knew it had already broken in ways glue could never hold. I wish I could say I left. I wish I could say I packed a duffel bag, tossed her a cold stare, and drove off into some brooding, guitar-laced sunset. But I didn't. Instead, I stayed. Like a dumb dog who heard the thunder but still thought maybe the porch light meant home. The next morning was weird. Not heavy, weird. Rachel acted like we had a minor disagreement over Chinese takeout, not an emotional atomic bomb. You want eggs? She asked, cracking them into the skillet like nothing happened. Sure, I muttered, still half draped in the fog of our argument. Scrambled? No. Sunny side up. She stopped. Looked at me. You hate yolk. I changed my mind. Translation, I don't know who I am anymore. We ate in silence. Except for the egg slurp noises, which somehow made it all worse. After breakfast, she turned on one of those crime docuseries she always liked, murder, betrayal, tearful interviews. She called them relaxing. Irony is dead, I muttered. What? Nothing. Just enjoying this case of the guy who didn't see it coming. She paused, narrowed her eyes, and then hit play. Around noon, I escaped to the garage. That's when my phone buzzed. It was Brandon. My buddy. The guy who helped me through basic. The one I used to trust with the keys to my truck and, unknowingly, the cracks in my marriage. His text read, "You free for a beer?" I stared at it. Typed sure, then deleted it. Typed maybe later, deleted that too. Eventually, I sent, you know what? Yeah. Let's talk. Because here's the thing about shattered trust, it doesn't just make you question your spouse. It makes you question everyone. We met at a bar called Dusty's. One of those places where the napkins are thinner than the excuses people make after their fifth shot. Brandon showed up in his usual hoodie and too tight jeans. He ordered a lager, clinked my glass, and said, "Rough night?" I gave him the look. You know the one. The "don't start with me unless you plan to finish" look. He took a sip. Look, man. I don't know what's going on, but... Don't, I said. He blinked. Don't what? Don't play dumb. You're not good at it. He shifted in his seat. Okay. You want honesty? No, Brandon. I want to live in a magic forest where lies don't grow on trees. He exhaled. It was a mistake. I didn't mean for anything to happen. It just... Oh, so now it's anything? Last night she said it was nothing. He looked down. That told me everything. You really think I wouldn't find out? I asked. It wasn't planned. That's supposed to help? Look, man, she said you were distant. She said you were always gone. She made it seem like you two were on the verge of ending anyway. My laugh was short and sharp. Wow. You get played by the same woman and you're still defending her. That's impressive. Borderline educational. Caleb. No, really. You think I'm mad because you slept with my wife? That's half of it. The other half is that you watched me crumble for months. Sat in my living room. Ate my food. Told me to hang in there while you were hanging on her. His mouth opened. Closed. He looked like a fish in a bowl of regret. I stood. Tossed a 20 on the table. Tell her whatever you want. Just don't expect me to play the fool anymore. He tried to follow me out. Caleb, please. I turned. Pointed a finger in his face. You had your shot at truth. Now I get mine. I left. And this time, I didn't look back. When I got home, Rachel was out. A note on the counter said, "Went for a walk. Love you." I folded it in half and placed it gently in the trash. Not because I was angry. Because it was a lie, dressed up as affection. And I was done playing dress up. I poured a whiskey. Sat on the porch. And for the first time in months, I felt something strange. Peace. Not because it was over. But because I knew the next part was mine to write. And I had one hell of a pen. You know the first thing I did the next morning? I cleaned the house. Yeah. Deep cleaned it. Mopped the floor like I was trying to scrub the memory of betrayal out of the grout. Dusted places I didn't even know existed. Organized the fridge. Even alphabetized the spice rack. Because if your life is burning down, you might as well make the ashes neat. Halfway through color-coding the canned goods, my phone rang. It was my mom. Hey sweetie, just calling to say your father and I are so proud of the man you've become. I nearly dropped the phone into the mop bucket. It wasn't Mother's Day. It wasn't my birthday. There was no reason for her to say it unless she just felt something. Like moms do. Like they're hardwired into your soul. Thanks, Mom. We were just talking about how strong you've always been. Even when you were little, you never gave up on anything. You always stayed true to what you believed in. I couldn't speak. Anyway, she continued, cheerful, we love you. Just wanted you to know. I hung up. And then I cried. Not sobbing. Not dramatic. Just quiet. Slow. The kind of tears that surprise you, like rain on a sunny day. It hit me that the person I was becoming wasn't someone I liked. Suspicious. Bitter. Paranoid. Spiteful. I'd been twisting myself into this brittle version of Caleb Morgan just to survive this marriage. And the real tragedy? It wasn't the betrayal. It was that I betrayed myself first by staying too long. I sat down in the middle of the hallway. Leaned my head against the wall. And I made a decision. I was going to leave. But I was going to leave on my terms. I started planning. That night, Rachel came home with takeout. My favorite Thai. Pad CEW, extra spice. She placed the bag on the table, kissed the top of my head like she hadn't just detonated my trust 2 days prior. I figured you had a long day. Yeah, I said. You could say that. She opened the cartons, started plating things like it was date night. And that's when I noticed something strange. She was glowing. Like genuinely happy. Lighter. I got a promotion, she said, mouthful of noodles. They're letting me manage the boutique for a month while my boss is in Cabo. Oh, I said. And here's the part one wasn't expecting. I was happy for her. No sarcasm. No bitterness. I was actually happy. Not because I believed in us. But because, deep down, I still loved her enough to want her to succeed. That broke me more than the cheating. After dinner, I went for a walk. A real one. Not a rage march or a paranoia patrol. Just a walk. The night air felt honest. Cold, but not cruel. When I came back, Rachel was asleep on the couch. Mouth open. Light snore. Her hair tied up in the way she only did when she was too tired to care. And that's when I noticed it. Her phone. Unlocked. Sitting face up on the armrest. I shouldn't have looked. But I did. Not for proof, I had enough of that. But because I needed to know if she'd stopped. And there it was. A message. From someone named Simply J. Thinking about last weekend. Still smiling. Last weekend. The same weekend she brought me Thai and told me she loved me. I sat down next to her, slowly. Gently. Like I was afraid to wake a stranger. And I realized, I didn't hate her. I just didn't recognize her anymore. And somewhere in that realization, a quiet kind of clarity took over. This wasn't my failure. This was just the end. The hook? There's one more piece to this story. And it's coming. Because the man she broke? He's about to become the man who walks away. There's a moment in every great western where the cowboy walks into the saloon, silence falls, and everyone knows the bullets are about to fly. No one's sure when or how, but everyone knows someone's getting thrown through a window. This wasn't a saloon. This was our kitchen. And I was the cowboy. It was a Saturday morning. Sunlight bleeding through the blinds. Rachel was humming while scrambling eggs. She moved like someone who'd already forgiven herself for something she hadn't confessed. "Smells good," I said, walking in, voice low like a storm on the horizon. She jumped slightly. "Didn't hear you get up." I didn't sleep. She kept cooking. Didn't turn around. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "So? Who's Jay?" The spatula froze midair. She didn't move. Didn't blink. Just stood there with a skillet of eggs and a skillet of secrets. "You went through my phone?" I smiled. "See, you always start with that. How did you find out?" "Not, let me explain. You ever notice that?" She turned around, arms crossed, spatula still in hand like she was ready to joust. "You don't know what you think you know." "Then enlighten me." "Because last I checked, I don't text my coworkers things that sound like the closing scene of a Nicholas Sparks movie." "Fine," she snapped. "It was nothing. Just flirtation. It didn't mean anything." I nodded slowly. "You know what else doesn't mean anything? These eggs." I picked up the plate, calmly walked to the trash, and dropped them in. Sunny side up betrayal. "What are you doing?" she shouted. "Taking back my mornings," I said. "And my life." She stepped forward. "You're overreacting." I laughed, loud and unfiltered. "Overreacting?" "Rachel, if I stepped in your shoes right now, I'd be knee-deep in excuses, emotional whiplash, and the phone numbers of men who think my house is a damn welcome mat." Her eyes narrowed. "You're just bitter because you couldn't keep me happy." And there it was. The line. The bullet. I stepped forward, quiet. "Dangerous." "No, Rachel. I'm bitter because I kept trying to rebuild a house you kept setting on fire." "You weren't unhappy. You were just greedy." She scoffed. "Please. Don't turn this into some dramatic monologue." I leaned in. "Too late. I'm the main character now." She tried to speak again, but I held up a hand. "I don't want an apology. I don't want a reason. I don't even want closure. I want my dignity back. And I want it with my name on the lease and yours off the damn Wi-Fi." And then I walked to the drawer. Pulled out the envelope. "Divorce papers," I said. "Already printed. All you gotta do is sign." She stared at them like they were written in fire. "You're serious?" "Serious enough to have my buddy Nate the notary waiting outside in his car. Brought donuts too. I figured if we were going to end a marriage, we might as well make it a brunch event." There was a long pause. Then, shockingly, she laughed. Not cruelly. Just defeated. "You really think you'll be happier without me?" "No," I said. But I'll be free. And freedom beats happiness when happiness lies to your face. She stared at the paper, hand trembling. Then slowly, silently, she signed. I took the pen, folded the paper, and walked out to the porch. Nate raised his coffee. All done? All done. He passed me a jelly donut. Want to celebrate? I took a bite. Sweet. Tart. Messy. Just like the end of a story worth telling. And as I watched the sun rise higher in the sky, I realized something. This isn't where my story ends. It's where I finally get to write it myself. You know what no one tells you about freedom? It's quiet. Not peaceful quiet, just quiet. The kind that makes the clock tick louder and your own thoughts echo like you're shouting into a canyon. The day after Rachel signed the divorce papers, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt vacant. Like I'd stepped out of my own skin and left it draped on the couch with last night's takeout. Every act of conscious learning requires the willingness to suffer an injury to one's self-esteem, John Holt once said. Turns out, so does walking away from a woman you once believed was your forever. I spent that week in a daze. Drinking too much coffee, not enough water. Running errands I didn't need. Listening to old records like they held answers. I even ironed my shirts, for no reason other than to pretend I had control over something. There's a strange humility in realizing you were the skeleton in someone else's closet. Not the villain, not the victim, just the ghost of a man who kept forgiving out of fear of starting over. If I'm being honest, I wasn't blameless. I loved Rachel the way a man loves a fire he thinks he can contain. Passionate, unrelenting, a little too proud of how close I could get without getting burned. I kept telling myself I was holding it together for us. But maybe I was just afraid to admit the version of love I built was based on illusions. On potential. On maybe someday. I worked too much. Numbed out when she needed me present. Dismissed her red flags because I didn't want to lose the dream. They say, you either die a hero, or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. But in marriage? Sometimes you're both in the same day. On Thursday, I found her wedding ring. It was in the drawer next to the receipt for our first mattress. The one we picked together after arguing for an hour over firmness like it would decide the fate of our love. I held the ring in my palm. It didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like failure. And then I did something stupid. I called my dad. He picked up on the second ring. Hey son. Everything okay? I didn't speak. Just breathed. Is it done? He asked. Yeah. There was a long pause. Then he said, you remember what I told you the night before your wedding? That I should bring earplugs to the honeymoon? He laughed. No, the other thing. I did remember. Clear as day. He told me, marriage doesn't make you whole. It just shows you where the cracks already are. Turns out he was right. I thanked him. We hung up. And I sat in my garage, staring at my old army duffel bag. The same one I used to pack with discipline and purpose. Now it was filled with half-folded clothes and a toothbrush that somehow looked guilty. That night, I walked into our empty bedroom and laid down on my side of the bed. It still smelled like her. Lavender shampoo and cinnamon gum. And I cried. Not because I wanted her back. Because I finally let go of who I used to be. All endings are also beginnings, Mitch Albom wrote. We just don't know it at the time. That quote hit different now. Felt less like comfort and more like a dare. So I made a promise to myself. I'd stop being the man who endured. And start being the man who chooses. Because surviving love isn't the same as living through it. And I've got one more chapter left to write. 6 months later, I stood barefoot in the kitchen of a small apartment downtown. The coffee maker hissed like it had secrets, and the radio hummed something soft and forgettable. I didn't mind. Silence used to scare me. Now it just sounded like opportunity. The walls here are still bare. The furniture is secondhand. The view? Well, it's mostly a brick wall and a sliver of sky. But every morning when I wake up, I breathe easier. I don't have to pretend. I don't have to beg to be believed. And let me tell you something, there's real peace in not having to shrink yourself to fit someone else's version of love. The day Rachel and I signed those papers, I felt like a failure. Now I know better. It wasn't failure. It was freedom. A philosopher once said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." At the time, I thought it was nonsense. But now I know, I didn't break, I opened. And through that open place, I started letting in something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. These days, I laugh more. Not the hollow kind. The real kind. I go for long walks with no destination. I call my mom back. I answer texts from friends. I've started therapy. I even planted herbs on my windowsill, basil and mint and a stubborn little rosemary sprout that refuses to die, no matter how forgetful I get with watering. And maybe that's the lesson. You don't need to bloom all at once. You just have to keep growing. To you, the one reading this, maybe you're where I was. Sitting in your garage with too many thoughts and not enough clarity. Maybe you're asking yourself if it's worth leaving. If it's worth staying. If you've done enough. If you've been enough. Let me answer you with every piece of me that survived. You are not the sum of their betrayal. You are not the fault in their choices. You are worthy. Still. Always. And if you've loved deeply, even foolishly, then take heart. That means you were brave enough to open your chest and offer it. That's never weakness. That's strength wearing no armor. So here's my wish for you. Don't lose yourself trying to keep what's already gone. Don't bend yourself backward to hold a future that keeps running from you. Walk forward. Even if it hurts. Even if it's slow. And one day, maybe months from now, you'll find yourself laughing in a bare kitchen with bad radio and good coffee, and you'll realize. You made it. You saved yourself. And nothing, not even the deepest hurt, can take that from you.